Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So today we'll be looking at Ralph Mcquarries' concept art and the actual scenes they inspired in The Empire Strikes Back. As we found in our last episode where we looked at the concept art for A New Hope, Star Wars draws from many inspirations. This is a short comic drawn by famous cartoonist John Gerard called The Long Tomorrow. It would go on to be one of the major influences for Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. In one frame, we see a familiar robot floating in the background. Joe Johnston, special effects master and director, was working on the film at the time with Ralph Mcquarrie and decided to use this droid as the template for the famous Imperial Viper droid. Supposedly, they even got permission from Gerard to use it. Next up is the Tauntaun. This extremely foul-smelling animal was used by the rebels on Hoth as a mount. It went through many redesigns, and at one point it looked like a giant rat. At another time it looked like a velociraptor. They found food and shelter in Hoth's ice caves, which were full of vegetation and fungus. Besides AT-ATs, the only thing that preyed on them were wampas, but they were hard to catch and could run almost 90 kilometers per hour. Here we have the famous shot of Luke recovering from spending a night inside of a Tauntaun corpse full of flesh-eating bacteria, which probably gave him the worst hangover ever. What's interesting to note is that the Bacta is red and not blue like in the film. It's been said that pure Bacta is red and most likely the Rebels version was tinted or had some kind of diluting agent inside. The interior of the Rebel base on Hoth, also known as Echo Base, was one of the coolest set pieces made for the film. It was crammed full of droids, vehicles, and Rebel tech. In this one scene in the hangar, we see 4 of the artists that were responsible for creating it, including Joe Johnston, Harrison Ellen Shaw, and Mike Pangrazio. And for a split second walking across the scene, we see Captain Farrell McQuarrie, played by Ralph Mcquarrie. You can even see him holding his sketch pad in his hand. And even more fitting, the background is a matte painting drawn by him. And here we have a storyboard that details the ambush of the Imperial Viper droid by Chewie and Han. Several times through the filming of The Empire Strikes Back, George Lucas had set designers redo their build to match Ralph McQuarrie's concept art. The bridge of the Executor-class Super Star Destroyer was one of those times, and it's almost identical to the drawing. The exterior vistas of Hoth were shot in a small town in Norway. In this frame, we can see Imperial snowtroopers get quite close to the shield reactors in an attempt to destroy them. The second most important piece of equipment on Echo Base was the ion cannon. It was the only thing that could stop Star Destroyers from blasting escaping Rebel ships into little pieces. Ralph Mcquarrie brings us inside the weapons control center for the cannon and shows us just how large it actually is. The All-Terrain Armored Transport, or AT-AT, or AT-AT, is one of the most recognizable vehicles in the entire Imperial arsenal. As early as the 60s, the US military began testing vehicles that could traverse uneven ground. They decided on creating a concept based on an animal that had 4 legs. It was supposed to be able to maneuver uneven ground better than wheels and tracks. Although the program was eventually shut down due to budget cuts, this inspired futurist Sid Mead to draw a 4-legged walking truck for US Steel. This concept would be one of the major influences by the designers of the AT-AT. It's also said that George Lucas was inspired by the movie War of the Worlds and the tripod monsters when he helped design the AT-AT. The planet of Dagobah is rich with both life and the Force, and Ralph Mcquarrie designed many of the creatures that would populate it. Unfortunately, many of them were dropped from the film. Although, like a lot of his unused work, his art would eventually be recycled into other Star Wars content. Yoda's hut originally looked more like a mosque, but was changed to reflect the Jedi's more minimalist nature. The final design included an escape pod from the Clone Wars era. The small hut needed to be elevated by a little stage, that way Frank Oz, the puppeteer of Yoda, could go underneath and control the puppets. Originally designed as an Imperial Special Forces Super Trooper, this concept by Ralph Mcquarrie was eventually changed into the feared Mandalorian bounty hunter Boba Fett. In this friendly group photo set on Cloud City, we see Bubba leading a band of mercenaries including Bosk and IG-88. The giant space slug that the Millennium Falcon flew into is inspired by Jonah and the whale. It actually even kinda looks like a whale. The interior of the space slug was built inside of Echo Base hangar and said to be one of the cheapest sets designed for the film. If you remember from last episode, this drawing was originally designed as the Imperial City of Alderaan, a floating space station above a giant gas planet. Instead of going to the Death Star, the Millennium Falcon would have landed here. The idea was scrapped, but was too cool looking to completely get rid of, and was rebranded as Cloud City over Bespin. While most of Ralph McQuarrie's concept art made it into the films intact, Sometimes set designers like Norman Reynolds took the concept to the next level and made them even more fantastic, as was this case here in the Cloud City prison. In order to save some money, some of the shots were created using matte painting to depict scenes. This shot of Boba Fett's ship in Cloud City is almost completely made from a matte painting. Here is Harrison Ellen Shaw working on the final details. Perhaps one of the most famous concept art paintings is this early version of Luke vs. Vader. It was drawn before the script for the original Star Wars was even completed. At the time, Luke Skywalker was known as Deke Star Killer. The character is wearing a gas mask because at the time the script called for a lot of transitioning from one ship to another through space. George Lucas not only treasured McQuarrie for his artistic abilities, but also his understanding of composition. Early movie makers and photographers all based their first compositions on Renaissance paintings and other classic paintings. So it's no surprise that many of McQuarrie's concept art were framed the same way when they were transitioned to film. Well guys, that's all we have for you today. I really do enjoy the concept of making film and going behind the scenes and looking at the concept art and storyboard that would eventually inspire what we see on screen. So let me know what you guys think about this artwork in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on all of our latest and greatest content. And a special thanks to all you Patreon supporters out there. If any of you were ever injured, I'd get you the brand name back though, not the blue crap. Well, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.